Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting here in the new chamber. We have 3 applications on the agenda, along with the report on planning appeals. We will also be reviewing an appeal decision, which will be taken on an exempt side of the agenda. I am happy with this and intend to take the business in order set out on the agenda. Just a reminder that once committee has gone into exempt session, the YouTube stream will end and any public still in the room will be asked to leave. The first item is apologies for absence. Have we received any?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. The second item is declaration of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and any or other interest not already on their register of interest in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at that appropriate time. Do any members have any interest to declare?
Yes.
Councillor Lacey?
I'm aware that Councillor Lacey, my wife, had posted a message on Facebook supporting the planning application in relation to the change of use from a retail shop to a micro pub. I have not taken part in any of the support for the application or otherwise, and I intend to participate in the matter.
Thank you. We now have the minutes of the last meeting on Tuesday 7th of November. Are we happy they are a correct record and can we agree them by acclamation?
Chair, just on page 4, it's saying that Councillor Fawcett was substituted by myself when actually I'm an actual member of this committee, so
right.
So I don't know if there's somebody else whose name should have been there instead.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Right, with that amendment, have we got a mover? Yeah, thank you.
I'll second them, Chair.
And just take a vote by show of hands. Yeah. Thank you. That's agreed. Thank you, members. That brings us up to the main business for the meeting, our 3 applications. Before we start, I would like the clerk to explain for the benefit of members and speakers and those watching on YouTube how we will deal with them.
Thank you, Chair. This is the procedure for considering the business this afternoon. The Chair will introduce an application that asks the planning officers to refer members to any late comments or updates received since the agenda was issued. These have been published on the Council's website and hard copies have been circulated to you. After this, the Chair will ask any speakers to address the meeting. There are 8 speakers today and they will be speaking on all 3 applications. They will each have 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remain. At the end of the 3 minutes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask the speaker questions, if necessary, to clarify any points that they have made. After the speaker has addressed the committee and answered any questions, then they will be allowed to remain in the meeting, but they will not be allowed to participate further from this point. The Chair will open up the meeting for questions to officers, debate by the committee, and finally, determination on the application by a vote. The votes will be taken using the new voting facilities on your microphones. Finally, members, this meeting is being live streamed and a recording will be placed on the Council's website. Please note that others may choose to copy this recording. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. Let's move to the first application, NED/22/01196/FL. I'm not going to read out the full details on this, but it's a new development comprising of 38 new homes at Unston. In line with our normal practice, I'm going to ask the planning officers to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow officer to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? So I'm now going to hand you over to Phil Slater, who's going to give our first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have received a late presentation from Councillor Dale that was sent yesterday afternoon. As all members have received this, we haven't summarised the content. Councillor Dale refers to the policy LT3 and issues such as parking, energy, and highway safety that are discussed within the committee report. A further representation has been received from a local resident raising concerns in relation to the housing need, the design and impact of the school. This is a 100% affordable housing scheme for 38 dwellings for rental and shared ownership. Proposals include 2-bed, 3-bed and wheelchair accessible homes with 50 car parking spaces. As set out in the committee report, officers have concluded that the scheme meets the provisions for limited affordable housing in the Greenbelt, and that it meets the criteria as an exception site for affordable housing as set out in policy LC3 of the local plan. It is concluded that the proposal is not inappropriate in Greenbelt terms and so acceptable in principle. The application site is a greenfield site in the centre of the screen, which sits between Unston Junior School and Unston Garden Centre. The site slopes from the main road down to the belt of trees. At the top of the screen is Unston Crow Lane and the miners' cottages, which are referred to in the report. This shows the red line site boundary. The yellow line is a safeguarded land for education under policy ID6. This is a layout of the proposed 38 units. These are arranged in 3 terraces to take advantage of the levels and orientated to provide solar gain. The 3 terraces step down the hill and terrace 1 and 2A would be visible from the main road. Landscaping
Mic on and off again. There seems to be a gremlin there.
better. Right. Landscaping and tree planting are proposed within the site space to the rear of terrace 2. All plots have secure cycle storage. 50 parking spaces are provided, and these will be off-plot, with the exception of the 2 wheelchair accessible bungalows on terrace 2. The Highway Authority have confirmed that they have no objections to the parking numbers proposed. Level pedestrian access is shown in the north-east corner to allow access to terraces 1 and 2. The 2 bungalows are on terrace 2 and 2 apartments are proposed at each end. Gaping retaining walls are proposed which were planted to allow vegetation to grow between terrace 2 and terrace 3 as a communal open space, which provides trees and interactive play.
Yeah, have we got another microphone?
Okay. Yeah, apologies. We're going to start again from here. Is this better? Yes? No? Right.
Apologies for this, members of the public. It's new technology and we're still getting used to it. I would suggest if we get this sorted, we start it from the beginning again, I think.
From the very beginning? Yeah. Okay, no problem.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, well, I'll do that was cool. The application site is a greenfield site in the centre of the screen. At the top of the screen is Unston Crow Lane and miners' cottages, which are referred to in the report. Okay. This shows the red line site boundary. The yellow line is the safeguarded land for education under policy ID6. This is the layout of the proposed 38 units. These are arranged in 3 terraces to take advantage of the levels and orientated to provide solar gain. The 3 terraces step down the hill and terrace 1 and 2A will be visible from the main road. Landscaping and tree planting are proposed within the site and public open space to the rear of terrace 2. All plots have secure cycle storage. 50 parking spaces are provided and these will be off plot with the exception of the 2 wheelchair accessible bungalows on terrace 2. The Highway Authority have confirmed that they have no objections to the parking numbers proposed. Level pedestrian access is shown in the northwest corner to allow access to terrace 1 and 2. Gabion retaining walls are proposed which will be planted to allow vegetation to grow between terrace 2 and 3 as a communal open space which provides trees and interactive play. To the rear of terrace 3, the site boundary is a Gabion retaining wall and beyond is the education safeguarded land. This shows the proposed new access onto Main Road, the new lay-by and bus stop and the new pedestrian access. The existing wall will be retained apart from the gaps for the new accesses. The plan shows visibility displays from both the access and the garden centre. This is a street elevation from Main Road. It's cross sections showing the 3 terraces stepping down the sloping site. There are retaining Gabion walls to the rear of terrace 2 which overlooks public open space, which then drops down to car parking at terrace 3. This also shows that the scheme meets the design guidance in respect of separation distances and overlooking. These are the elevations of terrace 1. The bottom is the elevation that will face onto Main Road. These are split level units. This is half of terrace 2. The other half is a mirror of this. The end units are 2-bed apartments and the bungalows in the middle. This is a view of the bus stop and the location of the new access. The wall will largely be retained apart from the new access and a pedestrian access. A view from the bus stop looking north towards Dromfield. Access is where the bus lay-by is. A view from the proposed access looking south towards the Unston Garden Centre. A view from next to the garden centre entrance. Terrace 1 will partially be visible above the wall. It's a view from within the site looking down to the east. The bottom part of the field would be the safeguarded land for education. The trees at the bottom lie outside of the site and the school lies beyond the hedge to the left. This is an extract of the landscape report taken from the miners' cottage and showing the garden centre building and the school. This is a photo taken from Moorland View, Apenole. The site can be seen in the centre of the screen next to the garden centre buildings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we have 5 speakers on the application, the first of which is local ward member, Councillor Alex Dale, an objector. They will each have 3 minutes to get over their points and will be informed when 30 seconds remain. As members, you can ask ask them to clarify any matters that they have raised, but remember your questions should relate to the points which they have already made. So over to Councillor Alex Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I cannot emphasise enough the significance of the decision before you today, not just for the village of Unston, but for the district as a whole, and the far-reaching ramifications it will have. As the site sits outside of the Unston settlement development limits and within the Greenbelt, it would in normal circumstances be considered inappropriate development and be rejected outright. Instead, policy LC3 is being relied upon to demonstrate an exceptional case to permit development. But the policy wording is clear that all 5 of its tests must be met in order for it to apply. So if you have any doubts that any single one has not been adequately demonstrated, then I strongly urge you to vote to reject this application. Myself and the other speakers have coordinated ourselves to avoid repetition, and we will be asking you to carefully consider whether this scheme is seeking to meet genuine local community needs or more than that, whether alternative sites and options have been truly exhausted, whether the proposals are in keeping with the village and local landscape, and whether 38 new homes in a small village could ever constitute a limited scheme. In relation to the first point in particular, I implore you to very carefully consider the policy wording for LC3A in the local plan. It makes clear that to be an exception site, a proven need must be confirmed or supported by a local housing needs survey. That is simply just not the case here, as the survey conducted concluded that there was an identified need for just 7 properties, not the 38 we have in front of us today. And if you read the exact policy wording, it simply does not allow for the shifting of goalposts and the layering on of additional information from housing officers to fill the gap. And in any case, the extra information that housing officers have provided still doesn't stand up to scrutiny because it's indicative of a broader district-wide demand and the desirability of Unston as a place to live rather than genuine, proven local community needs. If we follow the policy wording to the letter, then the test LC3A sets has clearly not been met. You have to ask yourselves whether this scheme is seeking to meet the genuine, proven needs of Unston or the demands and desires of the district as a whole. If you have any doubts, thank you. If you have any doubts that it may be the latter, then I urge you to vote to refuse the application for non-compliance with this policy. If we allow this scheme to be approved, we'll be setting a dangerous precedent where settlement development limits in highly sought after or desirable communities become effectively meaningless in the face of an open season from opportunistic developers. For the sake of the district as a whole, please reject this application today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Has anybody got any questions for Councillor Dale? Councillor Foster.
Councillor Dale, you mentioned layering on of information from officers and I think probably the South Yorkshire Housing, the developer. Could you just explain that, what that means, layering on of information, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chair. So in terms of obviously the local housing needs survey demonstrated a need for 7, and then the developer goes on to say that, well, not all the residents who received the survey returned it, so therefore you can extrapolate up the results of that. So the implication there is that we're sort of, that the people who didn't respond are represented by the people who did, and therefore that there is a need there that actually isn't there, in my opinion. In my opinion, if there was a need, people would have responded to the survey, and that's how that should be treated. And in addition to that, they then pick on 3 particular figures from our housing strategy team. One of them is that 174 affordable homes are required per annum within North East Derbyshire. That figure is a district-wide figure, so doesn't relate to local community needs, in my opinion. And that figure was also being met by the fact that we have a local plan which allocates 330 houses per annum anyway. The second figure they rely on is the 259 bids on 7 properties in Unston within the last year. Now again, that figure is for all of North East Derbyshire. That's people from across the district who are applying for properties that come up within Unston. It doesn't necessarily indicate a local community need from Unston itself. And actually also, if you look at the way that our housing list system works, if you are applying for housing and you have a priority banding, you are actively encouraged to apply for as many properties as you possibly can, because if you don't apply for properties that are suitable to meet your needs, you have the risk of being reduced in terms of that priority banding. So I think that that figure doesn't hold up to scrutiny either. And then finally, the 500 applicants on the housing list who have a registered local connection. I've done some digging on this figure, and actually, from an email I received from the Housing Strategy this morning, I was really surprised to see that that local connection does not just relate to Unston. So the 500 applicants that they're talking about there are from a much bigger area, or have a local connection to a much bigger area, which includes Unston Parish, but also all of Dromfield Parish, so Dromfield, Woodhouse, Dromfield, Colaston, Gosforth Valley, and all of Eckington Parish as well. So that's Eckington, Ridgeway, Renishaw, Marsh Lane, a much, much bigger area to have a local connection to. Now, if you compare Unston's population to the population of that broader area, including Dromfield and Eckington, it's only 5%. So if you actually cut that figure down, that 500 people with a local connection, only 5% of that, it's fair to assume, would be with a local connection to Unston specifically. That's just 25 people. Now, I appreciate the development is to 38 properties. That is well over and above that 25 figure. And actually, the 7 people that they identified through the local housing needs survey could be included in that sort of figure of 25. So there could be double counting there anyway. For me, the demand is just not there. It's not been proven as it needs to be in this exceptional circumstance policy. And I think, unfortunately, the figures, and I think the report is very well written. It considers all of the key issues, but I think the figures from the housing strategy team have just been taken at face value and have not been interrogated fully in the way that they should be, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
I think, Councillor Dale, you've actually answered most of the things I was going to ask you there. What I did want to ask is, the 38 that are proposed with the 100% affordable, have you not just had another scheme further down the road, Nationwide Boat and Lister Motors, all affordable housing?
Yeah, I think another speaker might be covering that point already, actually. But yes, so we've had, I think there's 48 properties that were recently built at the former boatyard site, which is literally just over the border from Unston, which is 100% affordable. And then another immediately adjacent to that is currently being built out at the minute, which is 33 properties, again 100% affordable. And there are other applications in Dromfield that will be helping to meet that need as well that have been approved.
Chair, I've got a second question, if that's all right.
Yep.
And the safeguarded land that was for the children, for the school and so on, does this compromise the entire part and portion of that safeguard land? Do they utilise all of it, or has it just been squeezed?
I think as far as I'm aware, and I've had to recuse myself with my other role as cabinet member because of my objection to the planning application, so I've not been as directly involved, but as far as I'm aware, the total availability of land will remain the same. It's just been shifted around the development site. So the total land that's made available for the school will be the same as it was. But my view would be it's a slightly worse quality land because it's lower down the site, nearer the river, more prone to flooding, and therefore, it's less quality land, poorer quality land.
All that land is in the same ownership?
It is in the same ownership, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Foster, is there another question?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Yeah, it relates to clarification on relating to some of the points of some of the things you covered in your first speech, Councillor Dale. You mentioned far-reaching ramifications and dangerous precedent. I heard those, but can you just explain to people that perhaps wouldn't understand exactly what those mean in your view?
So I view policy LC3 as being a really exceptional policy. It's supposed to be there, to really, and the 5 tests in it, and the fact that every single one has to be met, is really strong, and it gives that added protection to settlement development limits. The fear is that an applicant, for example, in this case, can try to meet one of the requirements, say by doing an up-to-date local housing needs survey, not get the answer that they want, and then go to our housing strategy team to get additional information to try and make the case. Now, the exact policy wording doesn't say they can do that. It says it has to rely on a local housing needs survey. But they've done that nonetheless with this application. And the fear then for me is that everywhere within the district that is desirable to live, that has a high demand, high number of applicants per properties, could see this happening in those communities. That's not just the Greenbelt, that's anywhere with a settlement development limit which has land outside of it. You could have a developer coming and saying, well, there's a really strong case for affordable housing in this area, and therefore we should be allowing this application to go ahead. And the other thing I'd say is, and this is no disrespect to housing strategy officers, they have a job to do, and I fully respect that, but there is an inherent conflict for me because their whole role, their whole existence and role within the council is about promoting and encouraging the availability of affordable housing. So that it's very rarely going to be a case where they're going to be asked for information and they're going to say, well, no, there isn't a demand for affordable housing, because that's not what their role is. It's to promote and encourage. So for me, I really fear that this case sets a really worrying precedent if it's approved. I think that settlement development limits should be pretty sacrosanct. We went through all the pain of the local plan to get them in place. And if we end up with a situation where we're sort of opening a can of worms here with this one, because I don't think I can see how lots of other developers will be watching this and potentially looking at other sites that are outside of settlement development limits.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. If you'd like to take your seat again.
Thank you.
Thank you, right, we'll move on to the second speaker on this, an objector, Paul Scott. Are you okay with the microphone? It's the little button to the right-hand side button that you need to press. Okay. No, just press it and then press it again when you've finished speaking.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to talk about road safety and biodiversity. I'll ask you to imagine you're standing with your back to the entrance to this proposed development. 60 metres to your left, you have a blind bend, right-hand bend over a railway bridge. Between you and the bend, there's a bus lay behind the entrance to a garden centre. To your right, 40 metres away, big Victorian school building, built quite close to the road. In front of you, you have a bike track crossing the entrance and a pedestrian pavement. So sight lines for emerging vehicles very limited. If there's a bus standing at the bus stop, even more limited. This is what will confront vehicles seeking to leave the site. They're joining the main Dronfield to Chesterfield road. It's a busy road, quite narrow. It has a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, but the Unston Community Speed Watch has consistently recorded regular and significant speeding on this stretch of road. Also, vehicles coming from the Chesterfield direction after crossing the railway bridge, coming around the bend, may be immediately confronted with vehicles standing in the middle of the road, waiting to turn right in front of oncoming traffic. The developers say they expect only 12 vehicle movements each way from the site in the AM and PM periods. This looks very unrealistic when you bear in mind that apart from an infant and junior school and a hairdresser's, there are no facilities within reasonable walking distance of this site. The nearest facilities are 2 miles away. It is therefore very likely that journeys from this site will be by car. There is a bus service outside, but every half hour, and the buses take circuitous routes to serve housing estates, and they're not quick. So most journeys from this site will have to be taken by car. Bearing this in mind, the allowance of 1.3 car parking spaces per household does not look nearly enough. Each house will probably have an average of 2 vehicles, and this still does not make any allowance for visiting vehicles. If this results in parking overspill onto the main road, this is going to make it even more congested. Bearing in mind traffic coming and going from this site with the restricted views, the possibility of parked cars on the road, a bus stop, school pickup traffic, this is going to become a very congested and a very dangerous piece of road.
30 seconds remain.
Thank you. On the subject of biodiversity, people might think this is just a field and it doesn't matter. A recent report shows the UK to be the most depleted of diversity depleted of 14 European countries. If this field disappears along with the ones that are going to be built on in Dronfield, then with that bit more nature depleted. another bit of England's green and present land and North East Derbyshire's semi-rural character gone forever. So in the
That's
interest of
fine,
road
Chair.
safety and biodiversity,
Okay,
I ask you to vote against this plan, please.
Thank you.
Chair.
Do any members have questions for the Speaker?
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hancock.
Just to pick up on, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat, on your community speed watch data, do you have the kind of proportions of how many vehicles are speeding percentage-wise along that road?
I don't have any actual figures, but I believe from Councillor Dale that it has one of the highest incidences of speeding of any road in the area that's been surveyed, and a consistent speeding and some significant speeding.
Oh, thank you.
Any more questions? Right, if you'd like to retake your seat, please. Thank you. Right, the next speaker is Ian Wright, objector. Yeah, if you'd like to press the right hand button when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a 66-year-old lifelong Unston resident. I appeal to the Planning Committee to reject the application on elements of Policy LC3, Section D, which states affordable houses, quote, should have a close association with built-up parts of the settlement and in keeping with the form, size and character of the settlement and local landscape setting. This is clearly not the case. As pointed out by the Planning Policy Manager, quote, the immediate surroundings of the site are characterised by the stone school building and low-density detached dwellings set within sizable private gardens arranged in linear form fronting the highway, end quote. Again, in the words of the Planning Policy Manager, the proposed scheme consists of a dense cluster of terrace blocks offset at an angle from the highway, therefore totally out of character with the immediate surroundings. Furthermore, the South Yorkshire Housing Association website states in its opening paragraph about the proposal, this design has been inspired by local miners' cottages. I would say any comparison of the proposal with the miners' cottages in St John's Road is a gross misrepresentation. There is no resemblance to this historic development, which is a linear settlement dating back to the Victorian era, part of our village history and our coal mining heritage. These cottages are almost half a mile away from the proposal, casting serious doubt over the degree to which this is in keeping with the form, size and character. The claim the miners' cottages are the inspiration behind the development should be dismissed. The plan is at best a poor imitation, more suited to an urban city site. The proposed banks of terraces will bear no resemblance to existing settlements and in essence will be an isolated enclave between two existing settlements with no link to either. Regarding being in keeping with the local landscape, the plan does not satisfy this either. The renowned view across the valley from the east side of Unston Parish, from Hundall, Appernole, Summerley and Crow Lane, is greatly admired by residents and by many ramblers and walking associations who look across this beautiful landscape. This urban-like bank of terraces will therefore certainly not be in keeping with the local landscape as required by Policy LC3 Criteria D. Again, I reference South Yorkshire Housing Association's own survey, which states, subject to becoming available and having local support, I stress local support, these new homes could be developed on a rural exception site. There is no local support from either residents or the parish council. The voice of our residents and that of our elected representatives should be heard in determining the future of our much-loved village if a genuine consultative approach is to be recognised. I strongly urge the Planning Committee to reject this proposal, not just a plea from the heart, but based on the grounds that there is no demonstrable desire or need, particularly on Greenbelt, and as many requirements under Policy LC3 are not met. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just remain seated. Yes, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wright, for that. You mentioned policy LC3D.
Yes.
And you mentioned in particular keeping with the form, size and character of the settlement.
Yes.
Can you think of any properties in Unston at all that are nearby that it's in keeping with the form at all, in
No, I can't. Simple answer, no.
Right, okay. Yes, quick one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster. That's right. Right, if you'd like to retake your seats, thank you very much. The next speaker on this is another objector, Jonathan Oldroyd.
Cheers. Is this microphone
your
on?
Your microphone is on, yes. So I'll switch mine off and the camera should switch to you.
Okay. Great stuff. Thank you for hearing my objection today. It is my strong feeling that the number and scale of ongoing house building projects in the immediate area satisfy any reasonable assessment of the local need for affordable homes. These building projects constitute, from a practical perspective, alternative settlements that contribute strongly to local housing needs. This removes any real justification, in my view, for building on a piece of greenbelt land that is so visible from the surrounding countryside and so close to the habitats and ecologies associated with Ramshaw Woods. If I can briefly summarise these nearby sites, there's the Gladys Buxton site, which is approved for 27 houses, 30% of these being affordable, so that's 8 affordable homes. There's the Boatyard site, which is less than a mile away and comprises 48 properties, all of which are affordable. The Boatyard site is finished now, but its construction predates the Housing Needs Survey, so it should be considered to be contributing to the community's housing needs, in my opinion. Thirdly, the site neighbouring the Boatyard is for 33 houses. It isn't completely clear to me what proportion of these are going to be affordable, but the bare minimum would be 10%, and the application seems to imply that the whole site of 33 are in fact going to be affordable. And lastly, there is the Chesterfield Road site, which is going through planning at the moment. It too is within a mile of Unston and would provide 135 homes. 30% of these would be affordable, so there's another 40. So in total, we're probably looking at something like 243 homes, of which between 96 and 129 are affordable, and all of these are in Unston's immediate area. One of the things that strikes me most is that, set in the context of the area's history, the next 3, 4 or 5 years of house building activity will occur within the blinking of an eye. To me, that makes the Greenbelt regulation and the way that we apply it all the more crucial. It's during these periods of change that our countryside is at its most vulnerable. As Alex points out, there is no proven local need for this housing as per LC3A.
30 seconds remain.
And I hopefully highlight that the community is already accommodating substantial amounts of affordable housing as per LC3B. In the absence of these criteria being met, and D as well, there is no actual basis for building on the Greenbelt in the first place. I ask the committee to reject the application.
Thank you, Mr. Oldroyd. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Foster.
Well, somebody before me.
Yes, well, they're in Unston Green, and that's, you know, feels very much like our community. And in terms of the people who, especially the people who use the woods, who walk in the surrounding area, who go to the same pubs, these are the same people. So yes, this is part of our community. And despite the fact it being slightly over the border, this surely is, from a practical perspective, meeting housing needs.
Thank you, Mr Eldred. Any further questions? No, if you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you very much. The last speaker on this application is Claire Bond, the agent. Thank you, Claire. Whenever you're ready.
Should have coughed before I switched the mic on. My name is Claire Bond and I'm an architect at Sarah Wigglesworth Architects. We are experts in housing design and specialists in sustainability. We were commissioned by South Yorkshire Housing Association to design the new homes at the Unstone Main Road site. Following consideration of all relevant planning policies and provision of additional material to satisfy policy-specific concerns, our proposal has received universal support from statutory planning consultees with conditions we can meet. In particular, we have received recognition that our proposal provides high-quality, sustainable housing, which is well related to its surroundings and sits alongside significant trees, landscaping and biodiversity net gains, all of which has been designed to enhance the well-being and promote a healthy lifestyle for the neighbourhood residents and local ecology. We have worked closely with South Yorkshire Housing Association, Civic Engineers, NEDDC and DCC Highways to respond to both highways and local resident comments. As a result, we have developed a safe, coherent and compliant highway strategy using sound technical evidence included within this application. Officers consider, based on the advice received from the statutory consultee, that the proposed development would not lead to demonstrable harm to highway safety along Main Road or the wider highway network. We have also worked closely with South Yorkshire Housing Association and NEDDC Housing to assess the real need for affordable housing in Unstone. Additional data from the Council's Housing Register demonstrated that there were 259 bids for only 7 existing council properties in the period of 2021 to 22. There were also over 500 applicants with a registered local connection to this ward. Subsequently, from an NEDDC strategic housing perspective, there is sound evidence to suggest that there is a high demand for affordable housing in this area. In addition, due to our full compliance with the criteria of Planning Policy LC3, the proposal is considered by officers to not be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. To summarise, we are proposing a sensitive housing and landscape scheme for this site, delivering affordable and accessible homes where there is a solid proven need and without a negative impact on highways. We are delighted to have received support from the planning officer and planning consultees who have recognised our green ambitions and the high quality contribution that this development will offer to Unstone and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Elliott.
Chair. You say you're experts in housing design and we've heard one of the previous objectors state that the houses that...
Sorry, Councillor Elliott.
I think it's because you've not gone to people in order. It brings us up in order. Heather was first, then I was second, then Pete.
Right. So I saw a hand go.
Oh, you can't have your own way every time, David. Would you like to go before me?
I'm not fussed either way, Pete. If we're not using the systematised design, it's not going to work, is it?
Chair, you make a decision on
I'm
that.
going to make a decision. I'm going to let you continue.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Oh, gentleman to the last. So when I hear you say experts in housing design and so on, but one of the objectors says that you've not looked at the old coal-boiled style houses and taken into account their history with that coal and mining area. I just want your comments on that, please.
Yeah, thank you for your question. We spent a lot of time sort of in Unstone Village going and speaking to residents that were living in the old coal mining cottages. And that was sort of what drove, I guess, us to this ultimate design proposal. They were incredibly positive about that housing typology, about the sort of the fact that the fronts and the backs of the houses, you couldn't necessarily always tell which was the front, which was the back. They had low garden walls, long front gardens, long back gardens. There was lots of interaction with neighbours. It felt like a very close-knit community. And it was through our consultation with them and the really positive feedback that we received from them about that particular historic housing typology, I guess married with a lot of sort of historic research into the area and that particular typology, which is included within the full planning application. That's ultimately what led us to reach the design that we submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Turning myself off again. Thank you. I'm really confused now. I was going to ask you about Gabion Wall. Whether you thought, as an architect, a 4-metre Gabion Wall in open countryside, I find that rather urban rather than rural. That was my one question. And also, I'm really confused now because you've just mentioned long front and back gardens in the miners' cottages. These are exactly the opposite. So I'm a bit confused now.
Okay, I'll start with the Gabion Wall. So I guess that the key consideration with this site as well is making sure that we've got increased biodiversity. It's been referenced that, you know, we need to make sure that we're celebrating existing biodiversity in our countryside, and the great thing about the Gabion baskets is that they're able to provide us with a framework for greening. So ultimately that will read as sort of a green wall, I guess, where we'll be able to add to the biodiversity within the development, as opposed to a kind of very large stone wall, which actually wouldn't feel very appropriate for the countryside either. So that's sort of why we reached the conclusion that we did with the Gabion Wall. And then what was your second question, sorry? Oh, it's about the long gardens, wasn't it? Yes, so I guess what we've tried to do is we've still made sure that our front and rear gardens are pretty equal in size, so they all exceed the amenity requirements that are set out by the council for private amenity, and they follow those design principles of having the kind of low front sort of garden fences, so you've got that opportunity for interaction with your neighbours when you're sort of arriving, coming home, leaving, off to do the school run or whatever. And then in addition to that, we've sort of provided the sort of public realm space as well, which won't just be for the residents in the new development, that will be for all of Unstone residents to enjoy, which is sort of providing additional green space in that area as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. Just excuse me because I screenshotted this earlier to say I've got the exact reference, but I'm wondering how you actually define the sound demand for housing, because in the documentation it is actually quite speculatively. It says, this clearly shows that the actual housing needs of residents in the parish could be significantly higher than the survey presents. So I would say that's anything but sound.
I think there's been some phrasing in relation to specific pieces of evidence. I think there's been some of the evidence which has been, that sort of particular terminology has been referenced, and then I think there's been other parts of the evidence which councillors have said they feel is perhaps more robust and more sound. But I think we can kind of all use our common sense that we're in a housing crisis, and you know, those figures sort of speak for themselves in terms of the need for housing in Unstone and the surrounding area.
Well, with respect, it doesn't though, does it? Because we're building in Greenbelt. So unlike a normal one where we actually have to go on balance of probabilities and we have to have a good excuse for rejecting something, the opposite is true here. It's got criteria it needs to tick, and the criteria for this is proven need. Well, this need is speculative because we're pulling numbers from all over the place, and that's why I'm asking you again to justify how you're saying that it's sound, because it just isn't in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, do you have
Claire, can you just turn your microphone back on?
Yes, of course. Sorry. Do you have the specific piece of the full quote from the documentation that you've screenshotted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Read
No,
it,
but
yeah.
it's in the
I can read
yeah.
you the whole thing in context, with the preceding paragraph as well. I mean, it is quite clear. Bear with me again while I get it up. It says, in the case of the Unstone survey, 836 questionnaires were posted to the residents and 118 returned, giving a response rate of 14%. A need was found for 7 affordable or social rented homes and 1 open market home. This clearly shows that the actual housing need of residents in the parish could be significantly higher than the survey presents. and a much wider range of property types could be required. So everything is could be.
Yeah.
There's no actual sound basis at all, it's speculative.
So that, I think, was based on the kind of the historic housing survey, needs survey, which had been done. And I think the speculation there is, I agree, sort of about whether the fact that certain responses weren't received, whether that equals housing need or not. I think the additional data that has been provided by the council is sound. You know, that's the stuff which is proven to and identify that there is a need for affordable housing in this area. I think the speculation perhaps was what was sent to us as well, which is why then that additional data was provided to ensure that you're right, it was robust and we are confident that we are compliant with LC3.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. My question is around your original statement when you first spoke in 3 minutes, saying that you'd met all relevant planning policies, and since then you've gone on to say that again. So my concerns around LC3, I'm sure you're, to read it out, I'm sure you're aware of it anyway. It does say there, and this is what we, for other people, we must satisfy all these needs. So A, they would provide affordable housing which would meet a proven need, which is supported by an up-to-date local housing needs survey. So it's quite specific, and it must be met by and supported by an up-to-date local housing needs survey. Now, you mentioned earlier that it's historic when you were replying to Councillor Hancock. It's not historic at all. It's 2021. It's very, very current and very, very up to date. That's the only thing that can be used to satisfy a proven need. Yeah, and I can go into that later. So it's the only thing, and the only thing we've got is 7 new affordable or social rented homes, and it was done by Midlands Rural Housing. Nothing else. Nothing else. So how do you think in your mind, because it can only be that, and I'm talking about how you meet policies, how can that meet the policy? It doesn't include extra information, which you can also ask the question on. Thank you, Chair.
I guess that the whole process of this plan, it's a very complicated site, as we all know. This whole planning process has been very collaborative with NEDDC, with all of the statutory consultees. And I think that part of that has been, you know, the way that one would with other policies as well, ensuring that the planning officer has all the, and the statutory consultees have all the information that they need to make a sound recommendation. And it was discussed in that collaboration and with the strategic housing officer that actually, for various reasons, which were all included in the additional report that SYHA sent across to NEDDC, that housing needs survey just wasn't truly reflective, and therefore additional information in this scenario was needed. And it was through that collaborative conversation with NEDDC that it was agreed that the additional information would be needed in this scenario.
Is it a quick point, Councillor Foster? Yeah. Is it a quick question?
It's a second question.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I might be saying you're right. I mean, that doesn't answer it at all for me, because it must meet these policies, and that's what you said, that this application met these policies, and it doesn't meet these policies in my view. You've spoken about a proven need, and you mentioned this twice, once in your first 3 minutes, and the second time in an answer to Councillor Hancock, and you mentioned a proven need in this area. Now, I know what in this area means. It doesn't mean Unston. It doesn't even mean in the ward of Unston, which includes all those outlying villages. It's actually, and we've got this from Dan Parker, who's our Housing Policy and Intelligence Officer, so there is a question here, it's about clarification, Chair. Yeah? It includes, in this area, it includes Apenall, Hundall, Eckington, right down to Renishaw, Marshall Lane, Ridgeway, all of Dronfield, Colaston, Dronfield Woodhouse, and across the Barlow. So when it's said in this area, that's what those figures relate to. So we've got to be very careful when we say that. So what is your view as what is in this area? Is it still Unston, or is it all that area? Those, because you're using those as supportive figures. What's your view of in this area?
My view would be in this area of Unstone.
Right. Well, that's very the only figures we've actually got from Unston are the 7. So is it still your view that you're relying on?
Yes.
From Unston and not?
Yes.
So all the figures that you've quoted that you're relying on aren't from Unston though? How do
Well,
you square that?
but they could be from Unstone, the way that you're saying they could not be from Unstone.
So you think that 500, that suggestion of 500, sorry, Jill, I've got to ask you, it's important, that the suggestion that those 500 interests in affordables are all from Unston and not from the 21,500 people living in Dronfield or Barlow or Marsh Lane or Ridgeway. That's just, that looks like to anybody.
Do you want me to respond? Yeah, I mean, I guess the reality of it is that we have been presented with this data. We feel, alongside the planners, that data is sound. It provides you with proven need for affordable housing in this area, in the area of Unstone, and that would be my conclusion, I guess.
No further questions, I don't think. If you'd like to take your seat again, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, colleagues, we will now move on to questions to officers. As always, I would like to keep this part of our proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. Once we have done this, we can then have our discussion about the application based on all that we have heard and read. So we've got any questions for officers? Councillor Hancock. Actually, Councillor Elliott was first.
Chair, Councillor Hancock's trying to steal my thunder. What's his game today?
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Question really is to Phil and Adrian. We've heard mention about the Gabion walls. When I look down that road and drive down that road as I do day after day, the walls down past the school and up past the school over the bridge, the railway bridge, are all in stone. So why is there a conflict? Why can't we have stone walls that border this site? Because I had mentioned that the Gabions were fine and all in keeping. Well, not to me, they're not.
They're an engineering solution that provides biodiversity, so that they'll in effect be a green wall. So it will provide a more soft design approach than, say, the stone, which will be more harsh. So over time, they will have planting growing up, and they'll provide a pleasant biodiversity. And in conjunction with the open space that's provided, it should provide a more green and biodiverse centre of the site.
Thanks, Phil. I mean, I think the stone walls, the stone-built walls would do the same thing and look more aesthetic to me. But thank you for your answer.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. The question is quite simple, to be truthful. In all the years I've been on here, we've been told explicitly never to deviate from the evidence that's in front of us, because that's the only thing that can be backed up at appeal. And today, on page 47, we're being told to ignore the evidence that's in front of us and take whatever figures are collated here, there and everywhere to try and justify why we're going up from this 7 or even potentially 8 up to 38. So I'm asking why we've got that inconsistency in what we're told historically, and we're changing it today for this application.
Just in terms of how we as officers, Chair, have come to the conclusion that we have in terms of the need, which I think is the nub of Councillor Hancock's question. The policy LC3A, as has been debated, sets out that there should be a provision of affordable housing to meet a proven need, which is supported by an up-to-date local housing needs survey. And we've approached that in terms of our officer assessment. Further to the original submission by the applicant, we've sought that additional information that members have been talking to various speakers about. And the original information set out there's the need for the 7 units in Unston, if you like. So we asked the same question that members are asking. This submission shows the need for 7, but you're seeking to provide 38, and we asked for clarification on how that had been arrived at. And therefore, in addition to the up-to-date local housing needs survey, which supports the 7, we sought that additional information which is set out on page 47, which as officers we believe is evidence to support the additional numbers, i.e. the information that we've received from colleagues. Thomas is here this afternoon and may be able to help in terms of some of the detail perhaps, but we've used that to identify and support the additional numbers, the additional 31 if you like. So as officers we would say we've used the evidence before us to identify that there is a proven need, and that does in addition provide support for the 38 further to the 7 that are actually identified in the replies to the survey that was undertaken. So we've gone one step further than that to try and understand the proven need in our eyes.
But with respect, Adrian, the policy, the criteria is actually quite specific and says a proven need which is supported by an up-to-date local housing needs survey. That survey is actually valid up until 2026. So pulling extra figures in isn't compliant with the policy itself because that limits itself to that local housing needs survey.
Through you, Chair, if I may, we're as officers we've sought to read the policy as we read it, if you like. So they would provide affordable housing which would meet a proven need. So from the information that we have, we believe there's a proven need for 38, if not more, from the information that we have, perhaps up to the 259 that have bidded for the 7 homes in the parish. And that is then supported by that up-to-date local housing needs survey, which admittedly provides a lower number, but it provides support for that larger proven need. So that's the way that we're reading the policy. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
Councillor Foster.
Oh, sorry.
No, carry on, you go.
Thank you, Chair. I'll carry on the same point, but I've got to tie this down before I feel comfortable with this policy, because the policy, to me, Mr Kirkham, is quite clear. LC38, we can't change it and pretend it says something else that it doesn't. It says a proven need which is supported by an up-to-date local housing needs survey. There is a proven need. The proven need is 7, but we've gone further afield, and to be fair, that's not in the report how far we've gone. We've only found that out from Down Parker recently, the actual distance we've had to go. I'm surprised we haven't gone further. It's a shame we didn't go into Chesterfield, but we've gone further and further and further until we've got the figures we wanted. We've gone as far as, like I said earlier, Appinall, Hundall, Eckington, Renishaw. Some of these places, these outlying villages like Dromfield and Hundall and Ridgeway, you know, that there's some very desirable places where people want to live. It's no wonder if you go that far and go to those areas, you actually find those figures that you need. So the proven need isn't for that area. The only proven need for this area is the one that we've heard from the lady who represents the developers, and that's for the 7 for the actual area. So for this specific area, it's just that 7 and no more. We can't extrapolate it. There's no mechanism within this policy to actually do that. What we've done is we've looked elsewhere because we're not happy with the answer. So for me, what I'm looking at here is the housing, on bottom of page 39, the housing needs survey which was carried out in 2021, which is what we're actually relying on, and that's all we can rely on because that's policy. The only thing had a disappointing response rate. So when it says disappointing, what we really mean here is we didn't hear what we wanted to hear. So we've gone elsewhere. So that's my concern. And so do you still feel comfortable as an officer that that LC3A, we're compliant with it? Because to me, and I think others here, it doesn't look like that at all. It's not a proven need. It's not for that area. We've had to go elsewhere. And the only housing needs survey which is there, which we do actually need and are relying on, it gives us concrete information. It's there. And it's relevant. And it gives us 7. And as it happens, just as a last point, there was a question there, Chair. There was.
What is the question?
The question was, does he feel confident in that? And we're looking at 7. We've also got information
Adrian,
that there's
can you answer that point? Do you feel comfortable with that? That's 7.
Yes, Chair, for the information and the reasons that I gave earlier. Indeed, in some appeals that admittedly dated now, inspectors have taken a view that the need could be district-wide, it could be even sub-regional wide, Chair. So comfortable in terms of the way that we've interpreted the policy and the advice that we're given, yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Chair. Adrian, I guess my question is going to be, are you comfortable with something as well? And mine, it relates to all the self-same things about appearing with the number of 7, but mine is a bit more on the SS9, because for me it's development in the countryside, it's green belt, it's outside the settlement development limit, and I know we don't normally talk about other planning sites, but we threw one out that was outside the settlement development limit on a greenfield in Calo last week, which they tried to do as 100% affordable. And we knew that would potentially come back and bite us, because they'll turn around and go, well, we can't develop it because we can't afford to do all of it 100% now. So it's like a loophole to get around it. If these say 7, as far as I'm concerned, it's 7. And that you can make up the figures from Dronfield and Eckington and Killamarsh and everywhere in between. But if it's 7, it's 7. And it's outside the settlement development. And it's on Greenfield. I don't know where we're going with this. Well, I know where I'm going with it, but I don't know where everybody else is going. So are you comfortable with that, Adrian?
I can only reiterate, Chair, what I said a few minutes ago. Members will need to take a view this afternoon whether they agree with the officer interpretation or not. If you don't believe that the policy LC3 and therefore your policy SS10, i.e. Greenbelt, is satisfied, then your conclusion would be that it would be inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and then you would follow on from that. Just in terms of the policy that Councillor Elliott's referred to, SS9, that's a different matter, because the Greenbelt policy is whether development is appropriate or inappropriate or not inappropriate. So that's an issue that members have debated with speakers, and you probably debate amongst yourselves in a few minutes, and you'll need to conclude on the Greenbelt issue. The impact on the character of the area is a different matter, and if your concern is regarding design or layout or any of those other issues, then that would be a different argument that you would need to come to a conclusion on. So acceptable or not in Greenbelt terms, so inappropriate or not inappropriate is one issue which you'll come to a conclusion on, and from the evidence, the information that you've got. Impact on the countryside would be another issue, as would highway safety or ecology or all those other matters. Hopefully that answers the question.
It was a bit of a statement and a question.
Right, thank you. No further questions from officers? No, good. Right. Thank you for that, Adrian. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard, what we think and what we want to decide. But before we go any further, I would like the clerk to remind us about motions.
Right, thank you, Chair. Please bear in mind, members, that a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken. If an amendment to a motion is moved and seconded, then that amendment will be voted on first. If a motion is to be moved which goes against the officer's recommendations, then the member who has moved the motion must give the reasons for doing so. The reason for moving a motion against officer recommendations should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendations falls, or in other words it is not passed, that doesn't mean that the recommendations are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision through a further motion in favour of the recommendations or a different course of action. This will need to be approved by the committee through another vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Right, I would like to open the floor for debate.
Well then, we'll go for it.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I've spoken about LC3, but I've got a second issue which is a real concern, and that's the National Planning Framework. It's mentioned briefly on page 53 when it comes to design layout, but not when it comes to with regards to the Greenbelt, apart from on page 46. If we're all following this debate, I'll give you a chance to find it on page 46. Towards the bottom, it says on 7.3, Inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the green belt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. As those some people will know here, that's actually paragraph 147. If at any time I need to be corrected by officers, Chair, please let them jump in, and I'm happy to discuss this, yeah. So that's paragraph 147 of the planning framework, so it's clearly relevant. When we look at what's actually allowed in the green belt, we have to move to paragraph 149. And the bit that's relevant is F of 149. A local planning authority should regard the construction of new buildings as inappropriate in the green belt. And this, then you're given exceptions. And F, limited affordable housing for local community needs under policies set out in the development plan. So limited affordable housing for local community needs. Now, at length, I've gone on and discussed the local community needs and said that this is not local. The needs aren't local. We've heard from the developer that they thought those figures were local, and the full 500 could have been in Unston, but they're clearly not. They go much wider, as we know. So the local we've covered already. What I want to touch on is the actual definition of limited, and I'd happily hear from Mr. Kirkham or any other planning officer on this when we talk about limited. So 38 is definitely not limited when it comes to building. Now, in the planning framework itself, there is no guidance on this. And to look for it, and thanks for that nod, Mr. Kirkham, to look further, what you have to do is you have to look at case law. And a recent case explains this. And it's Hillcrest, Abson Road, Pucklechurch, and this was for exactly the same sort of thing. It was 15 affordable properties in the Greenbelt, and it was dismissed on appeal. And I'll pass these two documents across. This is for Mr. Kirkham and planning officers to look at. And the key thing here is not to look at the full case at all. Yeah, it's purely to look at where I found what limited meant when it came to paragraph 149F. So it explains there, if I pass them all on, under 13, what limited actually refers to. So the appellant considers that this is the report of the planning inspectorate, which actually supported the council in turning down this application. The appellant considers that the number of residential units proposed is limited numerically compared to some of the much larger housing allocations in the council's development plan, their local plan. Whilst the number of units proposed might be limited when taken as a proportion of some of these larger sites, the term limited, and this is the important part, insofar as it relates to the framework, must be understood in context with the fundamental aim of Greenbelt policy, to prevent urban sprawl and keeping the land permanently open. So when you look at the Greenbelt balance and conclusion, it goes into goes further on into it, into 31, actually supporting the original council's decision in turning this down when it relates to paragraph 149F, which I'll go over again, which says limited affordable housing for local community needs. We've covered local and now I've covered limited. This is not limited at all. This was for 15 houses, and 15 houses in case law is not said to be limited when it comes to development on Greenbelt. That's 15. Here, we're looking at 38. Now, 38 is certainly not limited at all. Now, there's other cases you can find as well, if you look on the planning portal, and you can find out the definition of what limited is. It's not in the planning framework, but it is there, and we've been told time and time again, this is what we rely on when it comes to making decisions and placing, putting things into material consideration and weight in this committee. So for me, 38 is not limited, and that recent case explains that. So other comments alike, while I'm still speaking, Sydney coming back later on, it's a major development in an unsustainable location. Key, it's not in our local plan. It's speculative development from South Yorkshire Housing, from South Yorkshire. And it clearly goes against our policies, LC3. And now I've proven there, and I'd happily hear from officers, that it goes against the planning framework as well, especially 149F. And I'd ask other councillors here to look that up on the phones or whatever means you've got here. So these are strong material planning considerations, and they must be given weight here. So that's where our judgment lies, and that's why we must reject this here. This Greenbelt land, it belongs to the people of Unston. It must be protected for them and their families and not given over to South Yorkshire Housing. So at the appropriate time, I will be putting forward not now. I've had that lesson already. I will be putting forward a motion to reject this application. Thank you for that, Chair.
Right, at least we're clear where you stand, Councillor Foster. Right, anybody else got anything to add to this debate?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with most of what Mark said here. I mean, the key thing is, when you've got something in the green belt, you've got your definition, it must tick all the boxes on those criteria if you're wanting to proceed. It's not open to debate, it is black and white. It falls down at the first hurdle. So actually there's no point in even going to B, C, D, E and whatever else. It just doesn't meet criteria on A, so I can't see that we can support it. If it was for 7, it would be hard to turn down on that, but the fact that it's for way more than it actually says in that local housing needs survey, I just don't see how we can take it any further.
Councillor Elliott. Thank you. Anybody else got anything to add? Right, thanks colleagues. Having heard and read everything today and the officer recommendation before us, what is the view of committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. As I said earlier, I will be putting a motion forward to reject this. I'll give our clerk time to write this down. It will be that the policy has not been met, LC3A, that there is no proven need, as we've discussed, and also on the grounds that it does not cover the National Planning Framework, paragraph 149F, which it must do. And it's not something that's been mentioned in the report. So on both of those, and could I ask through the chair? No, I'll leave that one, but yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have we got a second, Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. For all the very same reasons as Councillor Foster, I will second his motion. I'd also like to add SS1 for sustainable development, being as in that locality, the pub's shut, the post office is shut, etc., etc. And mine was the SS9, SS10.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, through you, may I just ask for some clarification on those matters? I understand fully Councillor Foster's point. I understand that in terms of the development being inappropriate, contrary to policy, in effect, LC3/SS10. I'm less sure about Councillor Elliott's issues, Chair, and whether the committee will be voting on the issue of the development being genuinely unsustainable. And I just ask you I'd just like to understand that in a bit more detail as to why it's unsustainable, in what terms, because there's a bus route that goes past the end of the road, the cycle lanes, etc. And then on the other issue, we had some discussion about SS9 and whether that also forms part of the concerns of the committee in terms of what is the concern about SS9. So it's just that clarification, Chair, just so that as officers we can interpret exactly the wishes of the planning committee should you vote for that motion.
Thank you, Adrian. So who's going to give clarity on that? Is it Councillor Elliott or are you going to?
I'll provide clarity on that.
Go on then, Councillor Foster.
I'm a bit concerned about including that in my original proposal, because what I put forward, the LC3 and the National Planning Framework, is quite clear, and it gives other people here to vote for that, and it gives so they know exactly where we are. If that's okay, because what we haven't done, we haven't debated those points, and other people aren't aware of those, and it might stop people voting against this, because what we've discussed at length, the proven need, LC3, and now the planning framework, that it doesn't fulfil those. So I think it's clear to people, they know exactly where they are.
Mark, I'm happy to follow sustainability, but it's still outside settlement development and on Greenbelt.
Yeah, I'm happy with the two.
can we,
Thank you.
if we would, can we do it with the...
Thank you, Chair.
Apologise, Chair. Just so I can be absolutely clear, you want, would members, should you vote for the motion, want reference to policy SS9 staying in the reasons or reason for refusal?
No, I think it's LC3A.
Yeah, SS10, understand that.
Yeah.
And the MPPF.
And then PPF 149.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we haven't had off office is any clarity on that 149.
In terms of paragraph 149F, it follows then through into the local plan, so it's very similar in terms of that detail that's then carried through into policy SS10, LC3. So we'd include that in as part of any catch-all, as we do generally speaking, because your local plan should generally be in accordance with the MPPF anyway, so we'd add that words, those words in.
Right, members, we have a motion.
Sorry, Chair, can we just be absolutely clear on this then? So it's
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. I was just going to ask you to
do apologise.
to clarify that we were clear what we were voting on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
Right, thank you, Chair. So basically, as I understand it, it is to reject the application on the grounds that it's not in line with policy LC3A, SS10, on the grounds that there's no proven need for it. It doesn't meet also the provisions of NPF 149, given that it is outside the green belt, or in the green belt and outside the development limit. 149F, I do apologise. Is that the essence of it, members?
And we'd frame that, Chair, in terms of inappropriate development, as Councillor Foster's discussed and debated.
Thank you. Is everyone clear? Right, we'll move to the vote. Right, has everybody voted? Everyone can see it on the screen. Can just clarify that you're correct with that vote? Yep. Right. Right, the full figures, we have 5 for the motion and 6 against. So the motion has fallen. Right, thanks colleagues, the motion has been rejected. Have we got anybody else who wants to come in on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that we accept officers' recommendations, and I move that motion. I could give you some grounds, actually. I believe that we've been given the correct and relevant information. I've looked at the local plan, and I don't agree with your representation of it or your understanding of it.
Chair, I'm not asking for whether you agree or not. I'm asking for what policies are you putting through with your motion, so I know what to vote for.
Okay, let's go. Well, I believe that the criteria of LC3 has been met rather than not met. So, on that provision, I would like to move the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cheetham. Right, we'll move to the vote. Thank you. That's, is everyone clear that they want to vote? No changes? Right, that motion is carried. Thank you. 6 for and 3 against, 1 abstention. Yeah, if people who attended for that particular application, if you're welcome to go, you can stay if you would like, but thank you. Right, thank you, colleagues. We'll now move on to the second application, NED//00373/FL Killamarsh. Revised proposal for change of use from retail shop to a micro pub. I'll not read out the rest of the explanation on the application. I'm going to ask the planning officer to tell us about any late comments and to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? So, okay, Councillor Hancock. So I believe we've got Kerry Allen is going to speak for this and give us this presentation. So
Thanks,
we'll just
Chair.
let Councillor Hancock return to his seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to refer members to the late representations for this item that were sent out to, yesterday afternoon. This application seeks full planning permission to change the use of a retail shop to a micropub, including a 2-storey side extension. The application is a resubmission of a previously refused application. The site is located within the settled development limit of Killamarsh. The main planning considerations here are the design, impact of the extension, impact of the use on neighbouring properties, highway safety and land stability. No statutory consultees have identified any technical reasons as to why this application should be refused. This is an aerial photo showing the application site highlighted in yellow and the surrounding area. Access is taken off Cherry Tree Drive, which is included in the yellow shaded area. This is just a more zoomed in photo of the application site. The application site is a semi-detached property. The adjoining property is a hot food takeaway at ground floor with the flat above. To the east of the application site is a former Bull and Badger public house which has been converted into flats. To the south of the application site is a row of 4 terraced residential properties, and to the northwest of the application site are residential properties on Foxcroft Drive. This is the site location plan which shows the extent of the application site outlined in red, including the access off Cherry Tree Drive. The extension is shown on the western side of the existing property. This slide shows the existing elevations and floor plans of the whole building. And this slide shows the proposed elevations and the ground floor plan of the building. The proposal includes extending the building to the west by 6.5 metres with a depth of 10 metres. The ridge and the eaves height match the existing building. This is a proposed ground floor and first floor plans. And then just some photos. This is taken from Cherry Tree Drive, looking towards the application site. The properties on the left-hand side are the four residential terrace properties, and then the former Bull and Badger public house, which has now been converted to flats, can be seen on the right. And then just beyond the application site, you can see the roofs of the properties on Foxcroft Drive. This is a photo just showing where the location of the extension would be. And there's a series of footpaths that run close by the site. So the next two photos are just taken from the footpaths. So this is from the footpath that runs adjacent to the properties on Spruce Drive and Foxcross Drive, looking back towards the application site. And then this photo is at the rear of the application site. So the application site is on the left, and to the right is the boundary treatment with 48 and 50 Foxcroft Drive. Officers are of the view that proposal is considered to be an acceptable form of development within the settlement development limits of Killamarsh. Whilst there is potential for noise and disturbance from the use, this can be reduced and controlled through the imposition of planning conditions and a licensing application which is separate to the planning process. The proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of its design, visual impact, impact on neighbouring properties, coal risk and highway safety. Accordingly, officers are recommending that the application be approved. Just a point to note, one of the conditions, condition 6, refers to sections 5.2 and 5.3 of the noise impact assessment. This should read as 6.2 and 6.3. So if members are minded to go with the recommendation, I would advise that we correct this in the wording of the condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we have one speaker on the application. This is John Groves, the agent, and he will be joining us by Teams. He will have 3 minutes to get over his points and will be informed when 30 seconds remain. You can ask him to clarify any matters that have been raised, but remember your questions should only relate to the points which have already been made. So I'm going to hand you over to the Teams section.
Adrian, if you wouldn't mind stop sharing your screen so that Mr. Groves can come in.
Right, Ms. Groves, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you. I think you're muted at the moment. Mr. Groves, can you hear us okay? You're muted, I'm afraid, so we can't hear you in the chamber.
The microphone's usually at the top.
Apparently the microphone is not, symbol is normally at the top of the screen.
I have that, but...
Yeah, we can hear you now, so yeah, you've got 3 minutes.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. John Groves, I'm a Chartered Town Planner and I represent the applicant in this case. Thanks for the opportunity to address members. We're very appreciative of the well-considered officer report on this application, which I hope has been brought forward with a recommendation of approval because of the responses that we've been able to provide when the case officer has raised issues and had questions about particular details of the application. And through that process of negotiation, we feel that we now have a scheme which is appropriate to members, for members to consider and approve. You've already noted that the application has been, or a similar application was refused before. That was useful in many respects in that it highlighted issues which needed to be addressed, and we have addressed each of those, and I think satisfactorily in terms again of the officer report. The proposal is now much smaller than it was previously and takes up less space allocated to the proposed use. We consider that this is hopefully tending to be a community facility that will serve the immediate locality. So it's clearly in the applicant's interest to make sure that it sits comfortably within that community and doesn't cause any issues or problems. We believe that other similar operations, there's one in Mossborough, Craftwork, operates on that basis and provides such a facility for people to come in and meet, have a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever, and communicate. Much different to a traditional pub enterprise. It's notable that the officers have asked for detailed noise assessments, and we've provided those, and that leads to the level of control over the proposed use, which is suggested particularly in condition 8 before you, which talks about hours of operation. An interesting issue in that respect is obviously the building is already a retail use. That's now within Class E of the use classes order, and it could become a cafe without the need for any further planning permission at all. It couldn't be extended, the extension needs planning
30
permission,
seconds
but
remaining.
the use could change without the need for planning permission. And we consider on that basis alone there's justification for allowing the development and allowing a proposal which you have full control over in terms of hours of operation and use by virtue of condition 8. Thank you, Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr Groves. Right, do any members have any questions about the points which the Speaker has raised in his presentation? No, thank you. I'll move on to colleagues, you will now have the opportunity to put questions to officers about the application. Nobody? Right, no questions for officers, thank you. Right, this leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard and what we think and what we want to decide. I would like to open the floor for debate. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, my concern is around noise, especially this outdoor beer garden. There's talk of it being limited to 9 o'clock. I don't think licensing is able to put that measure on where it can be stopped and that noise can be limited. Even up to 9 o'clock, I think you've got a quantity of people outside drinking and socialising. That's going to affect nearby residents. For me, it doesn't meet SDC 12E. It doesn't protect the amenity of existing occupiers.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything to contribute? Councillor Liggett.
Yeah, just a question about who actually owns the land that's the proposed beer garden, because I understand North East have been mowing it.
As far as I understand, the land within the red line, which is the application site, is in the ownership of the applicant. They have served notice on a number of people as part of their application, but my understanding is that is in relation to the shared car parking at the front and at the side. They haven't served notice on anybody for the land at the rear. So my understanding that it is in the land of in the ownership of the applicant.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. I think my only potential concern on this is parking, which hopefully too many clients won't be parking because they'll be walking, but obviously there's going to be staff there at various points. So I think that is a concern, but overall I think in terms of noise and opening hours, I think the conditions actually cover and protect most of the things. So whilst I've got a niggle, I think I would be supportive of it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Right. Having heard everything today and the officer recommendation before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions.
I'm happy to go with officer recommendations.
Right. Councillor House. Yeah. Right, we have a motion on the floor for accepting officer recommendations. So if we can put that to the vote, please. Is everybody clear and happy with how they voted? Yeah, okay. Right, that motion is carried. 9 for, 1 abstention and 1 against. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to the third application, which is NED//00743/FL Dromfield. Proposed single-storey side extension, and I believe this is a re-application from a previous accepted proposal. I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about any late comments and to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have any point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? So I'm now handing you over to Ken Huckle.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I need to refer you to the late reps report which was published. There is a late representation from DCC, but this raises no new issues. The application is 23-00743, proposed single-storey side extension and raising of existing roof incorporating Bellix window at 14 Trent Grove. It consists of a revised scheme of previously approved application 23-00158. So it's important to note that the principle of the additional stories and extensions is established. The question is around the appearance and the amenity, particularly bearing in mind its relatively close relationship to 25 Derwent Road. Next slide. This slide shows the site context. The land levels slope upwards to the north, to the top of the picture, and 25 Derwent Road is to the right as you look at it. The properties share a common boundary which can be seen at the edge there. The next slide. Sorry, go past that one. This slide shows the proposed against the previously approved application. The previously approved being on the left and on the right the current planning application. That shows the offshoot which has been removed. Next slide. And this slide shows the view which is from Derwent Road. It shows the proposed against the previously approved again, the previously approved being in grey, the blue showing the proposal. If members note the measurements all in millimetres, showing that the ridge has moved 869 mil to the north, is 670 mil higher, and also the change in the window to the rear. Members should be aware that that the grey represents a fallback position, as it is an approved application, and that the changes in ridge height should be noted along with the position of the window. Next slide. This slide shows a sun tracker. It is dated for the 14th of October, and the lines show the sun on that date, including sunrise and sunset. The shaded area is a track of the sun throughout the year, and that is from the vantage point of the closest windows on 25 Derwent Drive. Next slide. This slide is taken, this photo is taken from in front of the windows of number 25 Derwent Drive. It shows the relationship showing the finished level of the roof and the ridge, and also the window to the rear. The next slide, and this one is the second one I'm going to show, and this is to the rear of 25 Derwent Road, sorry. This is an area that it appears seems to be the main private amenity area for the residents there. I think that's it, thank you. That's the end of the slides.
Thank you for that, Ken. Right, colleagues, we have two speakers on the application. The first of whom is Christopher Stacey, an objector. He will have 3 minutes to get over his points and will be informed when he has 30 seconds remain. You can ask him to clarify any matters that have been raised, but remember your questions should only relate to the points which they have already made. Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Stacey, you've got 3 minutes.
I think the main criteria for me is that this doesn't meet, it didn't initially meet the requirements of the Drumfield plan, which actually states a detailed report was undertaken which provides strong evidence that the need for smaller 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings will grow significantly, while some of this need will be met, created by first-time buyers. More significantly will be the growth of the households of retirement age. This application actually reduces the stock of such houses and replaces it with much more expensive 4-bedroom property. I appreciate that you've already passed this, but I live, it's 27 Derwent Road actually, I live, this is the most affected property, and we never received a letter from the planning department to allow us to object in the first place, and neither did another adjoining property, 206 Homley Lane. This new this property has been built, looks directly into my lounge. The window of the end of the property looks directly into my lounge, and it overshadows. I don't know about the date in October, but for certain times in spring and autumn, the sun actually goes down an hour earlier, behind this property, and it doesn't shine on my property at all. I have to turn my lights on and the heating on earlier if it's sunny, because it doesn't get that light and heat anymore, and that will be in spring and autumn. And the actual date of whatever it is in October isn't actually relevant to the rest of the year. There is a property at the back, over the top of this ridge, that is 2-storey as well, but most people can't see that property, and the eastern end of this property overlooks 206 Homley Lane. They've only been able to build that property to 1-storey level, where it actually looks over 206 Homley Lane, and it has a blank wall at that end, no window, because it overlooks it. That's it.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? Thank you, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Mr. Stacey. You mentioned earlier about your loss of privacy. What my concern is, because I've seen the property and I've seen that that overlooking window. Is it possible officers could bring that picture up on the screen? The one with the window overlooking the garden. That's obviously taken from your garden. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's there. Now, when I've seen that that there, as I stood, and I know there'll be a little bit of growth on that hedge since I was there, that photo looks like it's taken with a very low camera.
Yeah,
it looks like it does that. That doesn't look reflective of me at all.
No, actually, I don't know if Ken took a picture from inside the property, but the property is just to the right. The actual lounge window is to the right. It isn't representative, as you say. Also, that hedge, I've allowed it to grow a metre high. If you look at the hedge on the left-hand side, that's the normal height of that hedge, about 2 metres, and I can cut that quite easily. The hedge at the back I've tried to let grow because obviously trying to retain some privacy, but I won't be able to cut that. It'll cost me, I've had a quote, cost me £120 twice a year to have it cut if it grows up sufficiently high. But I think I would prefer to have left it at 2 metres, which is, I consider, a reasonable height.
Yeah, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. What I'm trying to get to the bottom of, Mr. Stacey, is if you stand at your lounge window, that window looks directly into your lounge from there.
Does.
And I don't think other people can actually see that
No,
from there. Because
that's not reflective of that.
shot's
No, it does look
taken from
directly
down there, I believe.
Yeah, I've got a picture, but I'm not allowed to show a picture.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Right, Mr. Stacey, you can retake your seat. Right, the second speaker on this application is Mr. James Kemp, the applicant.
Good afternoon, thank you very much.
You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm the applicant and the owner of 14 Trent Grove. I'd like to start by assuring the committee that I have acted in a professional manner from the outset and liaised with the planning officers throughout. When I submitted the original application in February, I was sympathetic to the street scene on Trent Grove. There are a mixture of 2-storey detached houses, dormer bungalows, and a newly built chalet bungalow. Upon receiving approval in April, I then obtained detailed tenders. Please note that I didn't purchase the bungalow until I received approval. It was at this point I was advised to amend the proposals due to the costs associated with the foundations. This was approximately £25,000 because there's a 10-metre drop between my property and Homely Lane. After seeking further advice from a structural engineer, I agreed. To reiterate, I liaised with the planning officer throughout this amended scheme. The amended proposals essentially remove the L footprint, making the footprint overall smaller than the approved scheme, albeit like the planning officer has stated, 670 millimetres higher at the ridge, but almost a metre further north. Also, more importantly, the window position is the same height and moves nearly a metre further north than the original approved application. Although similar in design to 16 Trent Grove, which is the new chalet bungalow, with bedroom accommodation in the roof space, my proposal is lower from ground to eaves level. There is mention in the objection that my proposal has an effect on the property to the rear with regard to sunlight. Looking at the sun calc again, the sun sets before it even reaches my house from early October onwards. That's also ignoring the fact that my bungalow's orientation hasn't changed. Let's not forget there was a bungalow there in the first place. And the hedge at the back is 2.7 metres high between our properties. And finally, I'd just like to advise that my neighbours on Trent Grove have been extremely supportive and certainly not distressed by the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Elliott.
Just one, Chair. The window that we've been talking about looks directly into a lounge. What is that a bedroom?
It's not directly. There is an angle. I think the angle is about 70 degrees. It's not direct at all. It is a bedroom window.
So is there any way that could be obscured, or would that?
If that was necessary, I'm sure.
That's
sure,
all. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
No more questions? Right. I'd like to retake your seat, Mr. Kemp. Right, colleagues, you now have the opportunity to put questions to our officers on the application. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Are we able, question to officers, are we able to put on a condition that that glass is obscured?
Chair, if members are otherwise comfortable with the submission other than that issue, then yes, if you believe that was necessary, you could put a condition on requiring the window to be obscurely glazed. You could require it to be non-opening. You could have it opening in a certain way or restricted in opening if you believe that was required to make it acceptable. Yes, you could.
Yeah, coming back on that, Chair. Yeah, my concern, much like Councillor Oley, it is about the loss of privacy. I'm not sure about openers, but certainly when it comes to having opaque glass, I think that's a condition that that we could consider.
I've got a question for that on Adrian. Where are we with policy on whether that glass is suitable, whether it needs to be glazed in a frosted nature or whether it's far enough away from the property to the rear? Where are we with policy with that?
Yeah, just in terms of the distance to the property, Chair, from the rear facade of the applicant's property to the nearest point on the most affected property, I think is the one just over the head that Councillor Foster referred to, the nearest point of where the wall is at 90 degrees is just under 21 metres, which you would normally have facing windows. The nearest point from that rear facade where the window is to the most impacted property is just, from my measurements, is just in excess of 21 metres, which you would normally look for. But in this instance, the distance from the rear facade to the boundary is slightly under the 10.5 metres you would normally look for. So in terms of making the development acceptable, if you don't believe in its current form, without any obscurity to the glazing, you could put a condition on requiring that window to the rear to be obscurely glazed. And just in brief discussion with Ken, probably suggest if that was the issue that most was of concern to members, you might want the right-hand pane of that to only be able to open hinged on the right-hand side when looking out, so that the window came here and didn't therefore allow direct looking through the glass towards the garden. You'd look in a slightly obscure way. So that would be my suggestion. If members are concerned about that, you do put a condition on requiring the glazing to be obscurely finished and with that hinged on the right, well, hinged on both sides if you like, so it didn't open out from the top.
But as a policy framework, are we? Is it meeting the requirements for policy framework? That's what.
If you believe that is required to make the development acceptable, yes, you would be within your rights to require that. You would require that as a condition, I think,
yeah.
To require both its imposition and then retention subsequently.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Adrian, I'm still not quite clear on that one. As it currently stands, is this application currently fit to be approved without the necessity for the glazing and the aforementioned hinging? Or is it a necessity as it currently stands to be frosted over? My understanding is it currently meets the requirements, MPF, etc.
In terms of the distances between facing windows, it would. The only issue that it wouldn't meet your normal requirements is in terms of the depth of the garden from the window to the rear boundary. You would normally be looking for 10.5 metres for that, and it's slightly under that.
So because of that distance to the boundary, the frosting of the glass and the hinging of the window essentially makes that more of a necessity than it would, was it not, for that factor?
In our balance as officers, we've not sought to impose that condition on balance.
Yeah.
However, if the concern amongst the planning committee is that that is an issue in view of that slight reduction of what you would normally require, you could put that condition on, which would then mean that the impact would, certainly in view of officers, would be reduced to an acceptable level.
But it's currently viewed by officers that this meets the requirements on balance in order to be satisfactorily passed. This is enhancing condition, not a necessitating one.
Yes, and I stand to be corrected by Ken here, but we've taken into account that because of the existence of the existing hedge.
Yeah.
So that's been in
So
our
that is
consideration.
an
of
extra
that.
objective, right? Okay. So it's not required to, as things currently stand. Sorry.
And as I say, just to emphasise, our on balance view is taking into account the hedge, and you've heard discussion about retention of that this afternoon. So you would need to take a view on that. But that's the way that we've balanced it as officers.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've heard that the depth of garden is something that can be solved, then that lack of privacy that can be solved with that condition. I'm more than happy with that condition, and hopefully the resident at 27 Derwent Road would be satisfied that that helped keep his lounge and his garden more private. But we've also had offer from the applicant that they would be happy with that, with the opaque glass. So I'm minded to think that, you know, it's something we should put on as a condition, and it will satisfy that depth of garden and loss of privacy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Chair. Mark's just said exactly what I was going to say. The reason I brought up the obscuring the glass is it may placate both the objector, and we've heard from the applicant that he's quite happy to do that. Because privacy works both ways. You can see straight from the lounge window into this new bedroom. So it would benefit both parties. So I'm saying I'd be minded to ask for it to be obscured, or the transoms or whatever the window openings are, to assist it.
Thank you. No more questions for officers?
It's not a question,
Councillor
it's a comment, if you wanted to.
Do you want to just bring it up in debate?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine too.
Right. Thank you for that, officers. This is to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we heard, what we think, and what we want to decide. I would now like to open the floor for debate. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on the comments that have been going backwards and forwards, obviously I don't live in that area, but me and my rear neighbour, they're in a bungalow with exactly the same sort of setup. Obviously it predates current planning rules. You can see straight out of their upstairs window into my kitchen and vice versa, and there's a hell of a lot more than 20 metres between us. So I think for both parties, having obscured glass and restricting how the windows open will be beneficial to both of them. I would support it on there. And yeah, I know we're saying it meets these distances in certain aspects, but knowing what it's like when I've probably got 40 metres between me and my rear neighbour, and the fact that we can see into each other's windows, I would definitely vote for having something to protect both their privacy.
Anybody else got anything to contribute to this, Councillor Foster?
Yeah, I think on the balance of that, it probably enhances and enables this application to pass with both the resident and his neighbour probably, being somewhat more happy for this to go ahead. So I'll be minded to vote for that.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Any other contributors to this? No? Right, thanks, colleagues. Having heard everything that you've read and everything before you, and the officer recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions. Councillor Hancock.
Chair, I'm happy to move with officer recommendations with the added condition about obscure glazing, and I wouldn't want to re-quote him, but the wording that Adrian used with regard to how to open the windows.
Thank you. Councillor Fawcett.
I'll second that.
Purely and simply for clarity, Chair, it would be obscure glazing, and the windows would be hinged from the side, so that they would, in effect, not allow the direct looking towards the windows, if you like.
Is everybody happy with that wording? Yeah, okay. Right, thanks, colleagues. There's a motion before us. I'll now put that to the vote. Everyone happy with that? Right, that's unanimous. That's been accepted with the condition for the glazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance. We'll start again on item 8, which is the planning officers to explain the report appeals lodged and determined.
Again, Chair, very brief update from us on appeals this month. We've just had the one decision which straddles two appeals, a planning appeal and an enforcement appeal, and I'm sure members will have read the decisions relating to the retention of some cabins and then the change of use of the land from agriculture to the recreation and leisure purposes at Hag Hill, primarily relating around the use, the established use of those activities and the structures. So please read that, and it's useful in terms of how the 4-10-year rule is applied in terms of the lawful development certificate. So members, I'm sure, will find that of interest. And we've only one appeal that's subsequent to this report that will be reported in January as it stands. So we're waiting for a number of decisions to come through. Members will note, of course, that the number of appeals lodged remains high, and we will hopefully see those come forward in the early part of 2024, although in respect of the planning inspector at the moment, all bets are off. So we just wait with patience. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adrian. Do any members have any questions on the report? No? Right, do we agree to note the report? Yeah. Noted, thank you. As I have no urgent business at this time, we will now move straight to item 10 with the exclusion of the public.
Sorry, Chair, can you just read it?
Yeah, I'm just going to read it out, yeah. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting during this discussion of the following item of business to avoid the disclosure to them of exempt information as determined in paragraph 3 and 5, part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Act Access to Information Variation Order 2008.